being an incumbent president is an advantage in an election year, right? That's what we were taught during AP government class when I was in high school. After all, Obama got reelected, Bush Jr. got reelected, Clinton got reelected, Reagan got reelected, Nixon got reelected. There weren't that many at the time presidents who essentially failed to get reelected. H.W. Bush was the most recent one at that point. This was before Trump, but after Obama got reelected. But now, I think we've got reason to reconsider that. So, as we know, the incumbent president this year was not running for re-election because he dropped out in July. Instead, his vice president was running for re-election, and she lost. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say, though, that had the incumbent president run for re-election, he would have also lost. The polls looked very poorly for him. There were some polls even showing that New Jersey and New Mexico, traditional blue states, could be in play, could be potential swing states. There was even a source that said that Biden would have lost to Trump, and Trump would have had 400 electoral votes. Now, I don't know how extreme that is. That might be an outlier or something, but that would be an extreme loss, is what I'm saying. So 2024 was an election where it's bad to be an incumbent. 2020 was an election where it was bad to be an incumbent. 1992 was a bad incumbency election. 1976 and 1980 both were bad incumbency elections. So overall, it's kind of a wash when you think about it. So Reagan gets reelected in 1984. Clinton gets reelected in 1996. Bush Jr. gets reelected in 2004. Obama gets reelected in 2012. So in the past 50 years, we've had roughly as many instances of the incumbent losing as we have had the incumbent winning, if you want to count 2024 as the incumbent Joe Biden losing, which I think you can. I think you can. I see no reason to believe that he would have beaten Trump. If he did beat Trump, it would be extremely narrow, and who knows what type of tricks Trump would try and pull. But Trump won the popular vote against Harris. So this is like, as I said, it's not like a landslide in the traditional sense where like they get over 400 electoral votes, but it was a decisive win. So in the 2020s, in this day and age, is being an incumbent really helpful? You've got left-wing media, right-wing media, which mobilize against the incumbent party depending on who's in power and basically drag them through the mud. They mobilize opponents of the party in control. We saw that in 2020 with Joe Biden, and we saw that this year with Donald Trump. Elon Musk really rallying the troops around on X to try and get Trump elected. And he seemed to be effective. You had Joe Rogan as well doing that, eventually endorsing Trump the night before the election. Of course, you had the traditional people like Fox News, like One American News Network, all that, Breitbart, the Daily Wire, just going absolute ham on the Trump train. In 2020, the media was very supportive of Biden, very critical of Trump constantly getting hammered for his handling of the pandemic, the poor economy. The death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg also probably helped Biden in that election. So, yeah, I think the reality is that we're living in tumultuous times, unpredictable times. Being an incumbent president means that you're going to get shackled with a lot of problems that might be leftovers from COVID, and I think that's what happened in 2024. That these high prices that we're seeing, the economic downturn, this is the type of thing that is a leftover from COVID. There are other things too that happened, like foreign policy mishaps, not necessarily the fault of the Biden administration, but that the Biden administration could have handled better. Think Israel-Gaza, possibly the war in Ukraine. There are a lot of different perspectives on that, but I don't think that necessarily hurt him. although some people, mostly on the right, who are critics of Ukraine and more sympathetic to Russia, might disagree. But yeah, so we just had this pandemic in 2020, and a lot of people think that, well, this pandemic caused Trump to lose. Now, to be fair, they're probably right. I think if the economy had not tanked under COVID and a bunch of people hadn't been dying from this public health crisis, Trump probably would have gotten reelected. And I changed my mind on that. I actually remember I was in a class in political science in like 2018 or 2019, and I said, there's no way Trump's getting reelected. There's just no way. There's a lot of energy against him. People are going to be mobilized, particularly against him as the incumbent, now that we know what he stands for as president. And whoever the Democratic nominee is going to have an easy time. And then, yeah, the pandemic hit, and pretty much no polls showed Trump beating Biden. I remember that in the months leading up to Election Day. At least no polls that I saw. Biden just cruised to victory. Over 300 electoral votes. Not a landslide again, but a decisive victory. So we've had 2 elections in a row where the incumbent gets smited. And yeah, I think this just speaks to the tumultuous times that we're living in, the crazy times. But it hasn't always been like that. There have been instances where the incumbent gets reelected during tumultuous times as well. So think 2012, the economy was still not doing all that well, and yet Obama still got reelected. Think FDR in 1936, actually. We were still not out of the Great Depression. FDR got elected in the middle of the Great Depression because he was seen as a cure to the Great Depression itself and to Herbert Hoover's economic policy. He was going to clean things up. He was offering a New Deal that excited Americans. And in 1936, there were some people who thought that, hey, he hadn't helped all that much, but they still stuck with him. They stuck with him. And yet, they didn't stick with Biden or Harris and the Democrats in 2024 and trust that they were setting America on the right path to recover from the pandemic and recover from the post-COVID inflation surge. You know, so it's kind of a study in contrast. Like, the party in power can sometimes seize on tumultuous times and assure the country that, look, things are bad right now, but keep us in power and we will handle it. We will. And this time, they couldn't even do that when their opponent was probably the most unhinged candidate for the presidency ever, the most absurd wild card. The only thing that Trump had going for him was, I mean, he talked a good game on inflation. He used populist rhetoric, revolutionary rhetoric, and he had already been president before, and I guess people had forgotten a lot about his presidency and how concerning that was, and they decided to throw caution to the wind and vote for him anyhow. And let's be real, I think a lot of them are going to regret that. They're going to realize that they got caught up in the anti-incumbency frenzy and say, hey, I shouldn't have done that. They'll get buyer's remorse. And I'm not just saying that because, oh, he's Trump, he's a Republican, and I'm critical of them. People said that about Biden too. People said, hey, I voted for Biden because I thought he was a good way out of the woods on the pandemic and the economic downturn, but he wasn't. And then they flipped back to Trump in 2024. So there are all sorts of instances of this. When's the next time an incumbent president gets reelected? Well, it won't be in 2028 unless possibly J.D. Vance ends up becoming president before then, Trump gets impeached, or passes away in office, which would be horrible, no doubt. I don't wish that on any president or person. Something like that, resigns. Yeah, who knows? Maybe we're just going to have a bunch of back-to-back-to-back first-term presidents. It'll be really interesting. They'll just keep playing ping pong with each other. But yeah, as of now, I think the conventional wisdom of being an incumbent president is a good thing is not correct. I think we're going to need to reanalyze that because in the past 50 years, it's been a wash. You know, it's been a coin toss. And also keep in mind, Barack Obama, when he got reelected, still did worse than he did in 2008. George W. Bush did better, but just barely. Remember, he narrowly beat Al Gore, and he beat John Kerry by still a pretty tiny amount. So it wasn't written in the stars that Bush was just going to get reelected. It didn't seem like it was written in the stars that Trump would, but maybe it was. Maybe it was all on the wall already. And whoever was in office at the time was doomed to get their butt kicked by him. I don't know. Popular vote victory for the first time in 20 years, and won every single swing state. Wow. But yeah, that about does it. I just thought I'd talk about this conventional wisdom of being an incumbent president helping. Please let me know what you think in the comments about incumbency, about this election, about last election, about elections where the incumbent has lost and when the incumbent has won. Do you have any interesting examples to point out? I know I talked about 1936. Anything basically 20th century that you think is interesting, please let me know in the comments. I'm always interested to hear this as someone who likes studying presidential history. I'm not overly familiar with every single election, but I feel like I understand the most recent ones fairly well, and I always like to hear more from different perspectives on history as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, and I will speak to you in the next video.